आज मैं आपको essay writing के बारे में बताऊंगा. All of you are aware that essay writing is a very important component of your qualifying for the civil service exam, and a lot depends on what you do in essay writing. Not many people prepare well. They prepare essays, but they don't prepare for essay writing. My contention today and my explanation today will center around how do you prepare for essay writing. And it would be more to do with general preparedness than a specific essay. Many people are prone to prepare essays in particular, but I would talk about how to prepare an essay. And if you do that, what I tell you today, you will be able to write essay on any topic. I will touch upon what you need to do in the long run, in the medium term, and when you sit down to write an essay. So let's get going. The first point is how do you prepare? This is the structure of the presentation. First, I'll talk about preparation. How do you prepare an essay? How do you prepare to write an essay? Then you must understand the context properly. Important is what are you going to write then? And for that, the background, the past, the nature of essays that have been asked in the past hold a very important clue to your preparation for the essay. So you must understand the context. What I have tried to do here is to pick up certain essays or topics that have been asked in the past, just to give you a context on what sort of essay are asked. And then I will give you broad guidelines on how to prepare for essay writing. And finally, of course, the most important aspect of essay writing is practice, practice and practice. No matter how much you learn, how much you observe, how much you study, if you don't write and practice writing, it will come to a naught. So most important is practicing. But before we come to practicing, let us look at various aspects of essay writing. Now, in order to write an essay, it's important for you to understand what all is required for an essay writing. First and foremost is knowledge. Because until you have knowledge of that particular subject, there is no way that you can write anything. That's the first step. And I'll talk about how do you acquire knowledge. It's very important to learn on how to acquire knowledge. The second, and very importantly, is to develop analytical skills. So you may have knowledge sitting here, but if you are unable to analyze what is sitting here, and if you're not able to think analytically, it will be very difficult for you to write an essay. My job today will to tell you how to develop these analytical skills. And finally, of course, you may have a lot of knowledge sitting here, you may have a lot of analytical skills, but if you are unable to express yourself, and that's where your communication skills become very, very important. Let's look at each one of them one by one as to how do you acquire your knowledge, how do you develop analytical skills, and how to develop communication skills. These are all long-term preparations. It won't happen overnight. I've seen many aspirants preparing for essay writing in a month or 2 months. No, it doesn't work that way. You will not be able to write essays that are asked in the examination. And I'll tell you, when I come to the topics that have been asked for, if you just prepared for a month or 2 months, it doesn't work. It has to be a long-term preparation. And that's why emphasis on acquiring knowledge long-term, on developing analytical skills and developing communication skills. How do you acquire knowledge? I mean, there's no dearth of material that is available. There's so much information going around. But what exactly will help you acquire knowledge good enough for you to write an essay? First, of course, you have to read books. You have to read magazines. You have to read newspapers. Books, I would suggest, in order to improve your language and even otherwise to acquire knowledge on specific subjects. Now, fortunately, as a part of general studies, you will be studying a lot in any case. But here, as we'll come to the essays that have been asked in the past, the key here would be your ability to understand and acquire knowledge with regard to essays that are philosophical in nature. The topics are philosophical in nature. They're abstract in nature. And for that, you may have to study the thoughts of great thinkers. It will help you in a number of ways. So, for example, if you study Greek philosophers, some thought of Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Stoics, Epicureans, these in any case you're going to study in ethics. But if you can study it also from the point of view essay writing, then it will become easier. The reason why I'm asking to study these thinkers, both Western and Indian thinkers like Mahatma Gandhi, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, many other Indian thinkers, even Chanakya's philosophy. If you read all this, you will start understanding abstract topics. And when I come to topics, I'll talk about that. That is one aspect of your knowledge acquisition in terms of understanding the philosophies of great thinkers. Again, this can't happen in a month or 2 months. It has to be spread over a period of time. And that is why I say essay writing is not an overnight learning. It has to be a long-term concept. So this is as far as understanding philosophies are concerned, understanding concepts are concerned. Because if you understand concepts and philosophies, you will be able to understand the topic that is asked of you. Because at least one of the 2 topics that come to you for essay writing will be of philosophical in nature. In some years, in fact, both essays have been philosophical in nature, and hence it's important for you to understand these fundamental philosophies. In coming days, I'm going to discuss some of the fundamental philosophies of Western and Indian thinkers. You watch those videos as well, because that will give you some flavor of the ideas of these philosophers. Some of those ideas are mentioned as quotes for writing essays. So it will help you. So that is one part of acquisition of knowledge. What is the second part of acquisition of knowledge? The second part, of course, is about being aware of what is happening around you. This will be required in your general studies paper also. But apart from that, if you focus on the editorial page of the newspaper that you subscribe to, it will help you enormously. Why editorial page? Because editorial page consists of the essence of what is happening around at this point in time. They even on occasions, there are articles written by people who are of repute, who know how to express themselves, and you will get a lot of factual information also. So apart from understanding the philosophers, both Western and Oriental philosophers, you would gain substantially if you read the editorial page fully. Now, editorial page doesn't mean just the editorial. You have to read through the editorial articles. It will help you in a number of ways. When I come to improving communication skills, I will talk about the relevance of editorial articles. But even otherwise for essay writing, editorial page will be very, very important. Then what you have to do is to collect information. You know, as you go along, whether you are studying Western philosophers or Indian philosophers or other philosophers, or you are studying a current topic, information becomes very, very important to embellish what you are writing, to substantiate an argument that you are presenting. If you have the relevant data or you have the relevant quotes, it will embellish your statement. You will be able to further strengthen the argument that you are presenting, that it is not only your point of view, but someone else has done it. Or in case you have relevant data at your command, you should be able to, or you would be able to present that data to reinforce the argument that you're making. Because essay writing is all about presenting your point of view. And it's not merely your point of view. If you can actually bring in the ideas of great thinkers or bring in data to further substantiate the point that you're making, it will help you make a better essay. So both in terms of acquiring knowledge as well as collecting information, it has to be long term. And my suggestion to you is, as you collect this information, as you acquire this knowledge, try and keep revising it intermittently. Otherwise you will tend to forget. So when do you revise? So when you start reading, after you've read, and this is something which I've been suggesting, how to recall what you have read. Many of us have this problem of having read something and then they forget it. So what is the formula of recollecting what you read? Now listen to this very carefully. This will help you retain information relating to essay writing. So whenever you are reading and whatever you're reading, the first point is that you should be absolutely focused on what you're reading. You know, cut out all the disturbances. I don't know whether you have felt it. There have been occasions with me when I'm reading something but my mind is elsewhere, or my mind is getting disturbed by some external disturbances. So cut out those external differences. And first thing that you have to do is to be very focused on what you're reading. That's the first step towards becoming good to recall what you've read. So that is one. The second is, as you're reading, apart from being focused, try and understand what you're reading. You can't mug up things. You रट नहीं सकते आप. You have to understand. If you read in a focused manner and if you're able to understand what you're reading, the chances are that you'll be able to recall. So these are the first two steps. The third step, and it's very important, that after you've read it in a very focused manner, after you understood it, just close your eyes for a while and revise it then and there. It's very important. If you revise it then and there, the chances are that you're going to recall it later on. And the fourth step is extremely, extremely important. Whatever you've read, if you discuss it with someone, teaching is the best way to learn. So if you discuss it with somebody, it's going to stick to your mind. The chances are that you will be able to recall when time or opportunity comes. So first, read it in a very focused manner. Number two, try and understand what you're reading. Number three, try and revise immediately after you've read. And number four, discuss it. If you do all this information will gradually start sticking to your mind. And secondly, in your conversations, even otherwise, try and use that information as much as you can. So this is as far as knowledge is concerned, because as I said in the beginning, unless you have requisite knowledge, no matter what you have, you won't be able to write a good essay. So knowledge is extremely, extremely critical. And knowledge comprises not merely facts, but also quotes, etc., which are very important for writing essays. Now, how do you develop your analytical skills? This again is a long-term, won't happen overnight. If you think that you'll develop analytical skills in a month's time, very difficult. Unless you are a genius, it will be very difficult for you. So what do you do? What do you do to do this? Number one, I go back to the editorial articles. For me, editorial of a newspaper is extremely critical. Why editorial articles? Because as I mentioned earlier, these editorial articles are written by men of letters, people who understand a subject, people who present their point of view logically, analytically, and they are very coherent as they go on to explain themselves. So you will gradually imbibe those. It is a gradual imbibing of the approach to understanding or expression. So if you read articles that are analytical in nature, gradually you start imbibing how do you analyze a topic that comes. And for that, you read those editorial articles and then read essays. There are books on essays. Read essays, how essays are written. Again, I keep repeating this. It won't happen overnight. Say, let's look at it this way. Read one essay every day. Reading an essay won't take more than 15 minutes if you read it properly. This will help you understand how a good essay is written over a period of time. Don't try and do it in 2 days or 3 days. Spread it over a year. Every day, assign a time for reading the editorial page of an article. You will do that in an hour, less than an hour. You read it properly. Then read an essay in another 15 minutes. If you do that for next 2, 3, 4 months, you yourself start feeling the benefit of what I'm trying to tell you, and you will improve. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, discuss, and discuss. The drudgery of reading can actually be changed by discussing. Because you are discussing with more than one person. If you are discussing with somebody, it changes the monotony of reading or reading and writing. So I have always suggested that those of you that are appearing in the civil service should constitute WhatsApp group of 4 or 5 people and have a discussion every day on one topic. Mind you, if you do that, and I'm telling that from my personal experience and experience those I have been guiding in the past few years, if you do that, your expression will improve, and that I come to later on. This is the most critical part. And I keep emphasizing this time and again, because no matter what knowledge you have sitting here, no matter what your analytical skills are, if you are unable to express that on that piece of paper on that particular day when you got to write, it's all useless. Your marks will not be given at what you have sitting here or what are the skills you have here. Marks will be given on what you write. And hence, communication skills assume a lot of importance. Not merely in terms of UPSC civil service exam. Mind you, with my personal experiences, I can tell you, if you want to succeed as a civil servant, you have to develop your communication skills. Now, how to do that? Read one editorial article aloud every day. Now, I had been mentioning time and again the editorial page. Pick up one editorial article, stand in front of a mirror and read it aloud, slowly but loudly. Pronounce each word carefully. This may not have a direct bearing on what I'm saying, but it will help you improve your comprehension. It will help you improve your diction. It will help you improve your understanding. And after all, it will help you improve your expression. Do that regularly and record it on your mobile phone. Now, this leads to a lot of wastage of time. This is a positive use of your mobile phone. Record it. Why? Because you will see what mistakes you are making as you are reading it out. And you'll also see the improvement over a period of time. So after you've read one editorial article, the next step is put the newspaper down and speak it out in your own words. Initially you will have a lot of problems because you've not done that before. You will not be able to express yourself fluently. You may perhaps have not understood what you read earlier, but do that, even if it is coming haltingly. But I can guarantee that if you do that regularly for a month or 2 months, it will improve. Because ultimately, it is not what you read that matters. Ultimately, what matters is how you express what you've read, and that's what essay is all about. Here, it's more to do with speech, but the next step that I tell you, that after you've read it, after you've spoken it, the next step is you write it. People ask me, sir, what has this to do with essay writing? Why shouldn't I start practicing writing essays? My friends, if you don't know how to write, if you are unable to express what comes to your mind seamlessly, then how will you write an essay? If you get into the habit of expressing yourself seamlessly in words and in writing, then writing an essay will become very easy. Not only that, even as your answer writing will become easy. The fluency with which you can speak, the fluency with which you can write will come through practice, and if you do it regularly, if you read it out aloud regularly, if you speak it out, and if you write those thoughts, again, as you write those thoughts, there will be problems to begin with. You might feel that you're unable to express yourself for a variety of reasons. You may have not fully understood what is written there. Doesn't matter. Write whatever comes to your mind, and I can guarantee it to you that over a period of time, you will start not only understanding better, you will be able to write better. So this is as far as long-term preparation is concerned. Acquisition of knowledge, developing analytical skills, and developing communication skills. If you develop these two and do that seriously, the chances are that you are going to do well in essay writing. Now let's go to the next step. First is to understand the trend, because understanding the context becomes very, very important. If you don't know what sort of essays are being asked, obviously you will not prepare accordingly. And most of you would be reading what essays were asked in the past, but look at the nature of the essays that are asked, and then prepare a few selected topics. Now, it is quite likely that whatever you prepare may not come in the examination, but by preparing a few select topics, you will be able to change. There will be certain fundamental things that are available in a particular essay, could be used in another essay, and you will also get into the habit of writing an essay. And finally, of course, practice writing. I'll come to that later on. Now, here are some topics that I've listed out. I picked it up randomly from a few years, and look at the nature of, you have 3 topics here or 4 topics here with asterisks. Alternative technologies for a climate change in resilient India, management of Indian border dispute or complex task, neglect of primary healthcare and education in India are reasons for its backwardness, and rise of artificial intelligence, the threat of jobless future or better job opportunities through reskilling and upskilling. Why have I put asterisks here? But if you compare these topics with other topics, these topics will require a lot of facts. They are fact-based. So if you divide the nature of topics that are asked, some topics are fact-based, where you'll have to have a lot of facts at your command for you to write an essay. If you don't have, so for example, neglect of primary healthcare and education in India, if you do not have some facts to illustrate that there is actually a neglect, is there any data to indicate that these aspects have been neglected? If you don't have that data, your essay may not get you very good marks. For writing such essays, you have to have certain facts, certain data that you have, and you should be able to write. As compared to these essays, if you look at a good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. Now, you don't have to have facts here. There's no statistics that is required. What is required is a philosophical understanding of this essay. Maybe subsequently, I will take up 1 or 2 or 3 essays and develop those essays in the form that I'm trying to tell here. The reason why I have listed them out here, that if you look at the question papers that have been asked in the past, by and large, they are philosophical in nature, but on occasions, more than one, you have essays where facts would be very important. Now, why I tell you this is, I think your preparation should be more to do with philosophical topics. Because if you understand how a philosophical topic like a good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge, or wisdom finds truth. So you can give examples here, but not necessarily facts. We now look at broad guidelines for writing an essay. What are the aspects and dimensions of it? So while writing an essay, if you can understand the historical background of that essay or a background of that essay. So as you write the essay, it is important for you to look at the past of that particular aspect. It could be a factual aspect. So if you look at healthcare or education, as we're talking about, what has happened in the past in healthcare is very important to provide a context to what you're going to write later on. So when you start an introduction to an essay, best would be to look at the past or the historical background of whatever you're saying. Even if it, in case of philosophical essay, if there are certain historical background to that particular aspect, so if it is a quote by somebody and you know that somebody very clearly, then you can write about that somebody in the beginning, because that becomes the history of that particular aspect. So that is one. Second, you should be able to explain what is the main issue. You're not providing any solution or anything. You're just explaining that issue. So going back to the essay that I had mentioned earlier, if it's on education, if it's on health, what is the issue that is being considered here? If you should be able to explain that. If you're able to do that, then in answering those questions, your essay will form. So you can actually here raise certain issues also. Raise certain questions which can be answered subsequently. Then you've done the historical context. You also explained the main issue. Then you come, if there is any current, what is the present scenario? Now this sort of a structuring the guideline that I'm giving here, for it could work in any essay. I mean, some of those aspects may not be used here, but it would work in any essay, because for any issue, what is the current scenario? Again, going back to health and education, what stands? So there is a historical perspective, then what are the issues involved? And then the next would be, what is the current situation? So for example, if there is a problems with health or education, is something being done by the government? That comes next. Then you go into the pros and cons. Now this is broad structuring. It will largely depend on the nature of the topic that comes, but these are the aspects that you have looked into. If you have internalized that these are the aspects that have to be looked into in any essay writing, it will be easy for you to write an essay. So you look at the pros and cons. So there will be many essays where there will be a proposition before you. There will be something in favor, something in against. So if there is a proposition that comes to you, then you have to examine what are in favor of that proposition, what are against. Without you giving your point of view here, you are merely presenting how it is perceived. You know, your point of view will come much later. Just before conclusion, your point of view will come. Here you are giving first the historical background, as I mentioned earlier. Then you will define the whole issue. Thereafter, you will look at the current scenario and then the pros and cons. Then of course, if you are trying to find a solution to the problem, you have to understand the nature of the problem. What are the possible hindrances, the obstacles? Because if you say that, then you will be able to suggest how those obstacles could be brought out. You know, let me tell you one thing. In essay writing, not only are your communication skills being judged, not only are your analytical skills being judged, your attitude is also being judged. How do you approach a problem? So if there is a problem relating essay that you're doing, the examiner will also see how positive are you in your outlook. How are you suggesting a particular solution to a problem? And that is where I think if you analyze the problems correctly and you can provide suggestions. Now, you are not supposed to provide solutions to the problems, but you can provide an approach to solving those problems. They will look at that, and hence your essay should usually, if you are considering a particular problem, should usually suggest a possible way forward. Don't worry if it's not a perfect solution, because had there been a perfect solution to a problem, it would have been found by now. The fact that it has not been found, that someone has to indulge in it. So these are the broad guidelines that you should look at while writing an essay. Now, how do you embellish that? At the beginning of my presentation, I had mentioned to you that you should collect this as information, as understood information. It's not that you should have a quote for the sake of writing a quote. No, never do that. Until you absorbed and understood the essence of that quote, don't use it in an essay. But if you've done that, it will embellish your essays. So quotes would really help. So over a period of time, try and collect some quotes which could be used in any philosophical essay. Because as you develop the argument, if that particular quote fits in there, I'm again telling you, don't write a quotation for the heck of it. If it fits into your narrative, then write it, it helps you. But you won't be able to write a quote until you know a quote, until you learn that quote. So this you have to do over a period of time, collect a series of quotes and then run through the questions or the essays that have been asked in the past and see whether that quote fits into that particular essay or not. If you do this exercise regularly, you will get into the habit of writing quotes as you go along. It should come naturally to you. Then, if there are relevant government policies and programs and schemes. So again, going back to the essay that we were discussing about education and health, government runs a number of programs, number of policies. If you can mention them, because then it becomes easy for you that you can say government has taken these steps and you can list out those steps and also mention the policies. And then thereafter say why those policies have not been implemented on the ground. So it becomes very logical. The presentation becomes logical. You will write what was the problem, what government has done, what has been the progress so far, what are the problems still, and what are the possible way forward. So I'm structuring it in that manner. So if you are conversant with the policies in that particular topic of the government or the programs of the government, and if you are able to mention that, you will be able to strengthen your arguments or perhaps present the case more forcefully, because that's what the government has already done, and you will be able to critically analyze whether the government has done what they have done is not correct. Then relevant data. This also I mentioned to you earlier. While acquiring knowledge, if you have data, so again going back to the same topic of education or health, if you have data relating to health and education, it will help write that essay. In fact, in most of factual essays, if you are unable to provide relevant data, probably your argument will not cut much ice. With data, you will be able to forcefully mention or establish the point that you are trying to make. So data becomes very important. Now again, data cannot be collected in 1 month or 2 months. It has to be over a period of time. So you're looking at health-related data, you are looking at education-related data. There's some fundamental data if you can collect, which can be used in variety of essays. Maybe as I said, subsequently when I take up an essay, then we'll see what sort of a data can come into that essay to make your essay more attractive. So these embellishments will help you, because if you put in relevant quotes, if you put in relevant government policies, and if you put in relevant data, it will strengthen your case for getting good marks. Now, what are the do's and don'ts? What you should do and what you shouldn't do? Some of these I've listed them here. First, of course, plan before writing. What I would suggest is when you get a topic, and this again has to become a habit, a practice, that don't start writing essays straight away. What I used to do was to write questions, raise questions to myself on the basis of that topic, write them randomly, and then arrange them logically. So initially, the questions will come very randomly to your mind. Just list them out. Just brainstorm those questions and then list them out. This planning will help you, because if you raise those questions and written them logically, all you have to do is to answer those questions and the essay is ready. This again is a matter of habit. You will have to do it regularly, practice it regularly. Without that, it won't work. Then keep the sentences short. Many people advise that you should have a long sentence. No, I'm against. I would believe, as a reader also, you lose the context by the time you read the end of the sentence. Keep the sentence as short as possible. Here again, it's a question of practice. If you don't practice expressing yourself in short sentences, then you will not be able to do it at the time of examination. It's a matter of habit that you will have to cultivate to write your sentence. Don't write therefore, hence, how. No syntax in between. Keep them very, very short. It's much easier. They are much more impactful. There are some people who suggest that you should write long sentences. I'm not very sure that's right. Keep them short. Then present your argument logically. So, if you're building a particular logic, you can't come up with a counter argument in between. flow, logical flow. This you will develop as you read those articles, as I suggested earlier, your editorial articles. You will find that the presentation there is very logical. They don't digress there. One point is built out of the other and one flows from the other. That's what logic is all about. And you'll have to develop that. Again, it will come through practice. If you read editorial articles regularly, it will get imbibed. Then smooth transition from one para to other. There should not be any jerk, as if one story is over and you start with other story. One para should build into the other para. That's how there has to be a smooth transition from one para to the other. Then provide a balanced view. That is true of your entire approach to civil service. Because you all are aspiring to become civil servant. You can't take an extreme view as a civil servant. You have to look at both the sides. You may have a particular point of view, which may not be absolutely at the center, but then you have to take both aspects or whichever aspect is there before coming to conclusion, and hence you have to be balanced. You should not become personal. Sometimes we have our own personal point of view and we feel very agitated about the issue. I don't think that should get reflected in your writing or in your speech. You have to have, it flows from balanced view. Because if you have a balanced view, and you may have a personal view, nothing wrong with it. But if you have an extreme personal view, as some of us have, refrain from expressing them in your essay or even otherwise. Then don't just mention problems. It's not merely problems that you have to mention. In an essay, if you're writing, an issue has to be brought, then you should be in a position to provide some suggestions. The way forward, which I mentioned in the previous slide. It's not merely mentioning of the problem. Yes, mention the problem, analyze the problem with a view to finding a solution. That will, reflect your positive attitude. And hence, it's very, very important for you to mention, not just mention problems. There's no harm in being critical of the government. Though I've written, don't criticize excessively. Whatever is happening by the government, there is no perfection anywhere. So you can give a point of view that this is not right, this is right. But the whole objective of criticism should be to find a solution. Because if you appear only as a critical person, then you will have some problem there. So there's no harm in criticizing. Criticize government policies if you have to. If you have reasons to believe, if you have data to indicate that this is what is going wrong in government, please say that. But with a view to providing a solution, not mere criticism, and criticism should not be excessive. As I mentioned in the end, that's very important. You have to suggest a practical way forward. Now I come to specifics. How do you write an introduction? Here, hook sentence. What is a hook sentence? Hook sentence is something which catches your eye, which catches your imagination. It could be a question mark, it could be a quotation, it could be a data, because that hooks you. It's the I shouldn't be using this term, it should be the publicity part of your essay. The guy who reads the first sentence then starts thinking and wants to read the rest of it. So that's what hook sentence is. This again will come through practice. What should be your opening gambit, opening remark? What should be your opening, so that the people who are reading it get hooked onto it? And then, as I mentioned earlier, in an introduction, you have to provide the background of whatever you are discussing. Thereafter, define the objective. Why are you doing this? And then finally, provide an overview of what you are planning to do. So introduction para is basically telling the reader what he is in for, what you're going to write in future. So you can actually lay out, this is what you're going to say. As at the beginning of the presentation, I had given you the structure of the presentation. You can actually precisely say that in your introduction and say, this is the issue, this is what I'm going to discuss in the essay. So it will, so to say, a very brief précis of what you're going to write in future. A very brief presentation of what you're going to write subsequently. So that's what introduction is all about. Then what do you do with the main body? See, each para starts with a topic sentence and then provide evidence to support your argument. This is very important. I mentioned it earlier. If you have data, you'll be able to provide evidence of what you're saying. Merely making a statement just like that doesn't carry much weight. But if you can have data to support it, or probably somebody else's, an authority on that particular issue has given a quote and you can say that further strengthens the argument that you're trying to provide. Then provide examples if you can. It all depends on the time and the words that you have, nature of the topic. It's not that you'll give example, but if there is a good example to illustrate the point that you're making, if something good, bad has happened, that would help. Make sure para information is consistent. So within the para, you cannot say one thing and then say the other thing, bang opposite, unless you are trying to explain a point of view. So try and avoid. There has to be consistency in what you write. And the transition has to be, as I said earlier also, from one para to other as you transition. It should not be just like that there's a jerk and then you start a new story. There has to be a transition from one to the other. And each para, as you conclude, the last line or last two lines will be a conclusion of that particular para, unless you are carrying on that particular argument in next para itself. Then conclusion. This is very, very important. Now, if your introduction is attractive and your conclusion is valid, conclusion in the sense you have derived from what you've discussed in this main body of the essay. The second part is the main body, which was in the previous slide, because that's where the meat is. Here you are going to say, draw connection between arguments mentioned in the body. In the body, that is in the second part, the main part of the essay, you would have presented certain argument. You are now coming to a conclusion. Either it is what is right, what is wrong, what is the way forward. These are things that you are concluding. Then state the outcomes. What is the outcome of your discussion that you had earlier? So if you discuss something there, here you should be able to list out the outcomes. Then what are the broader implication of those outcomes? So again, if you given certain suggestions on how education or health could be improved, mention them here. And don't start with a new idea, because conclusion by definition is conclusion. You cannot start anything new here. So that's how you write your essay. This, to my mind, is extremely critical. No matter what you've studied, no matter what you've read, no matter what you've discussed, until you practice writing, practice, practice, and practice. And how do you do that? Assign an hour every day for writing. Now, this will not merely help you in essay writing, it will help you in writing any answer. As I keep repeating time and again, it is not what is sitting here that matters, it is what you write. Once there is a seamless transmission of what you have here and on the piece of paper, you won half the battle, or perhaps more than half the battle, because you will be able to express your ideas. Almost everyone who's appearing for the civil service prepares, studies, but doesn't write as much. And from my personal experience, I tell you, from my first year or second year, that was the difference. In the second year, I practiced writing. It made my writing the final exam very seamless, very easy. Otherwise, you will struggle for words, you will struggle how to express yourself. And hence, it's very important, write at least one essay every week. More if possible, but one essay every week. But apart from writing an essay every week, the daily exercise that I suggested of reading an article, expressing them in your own handwriting, I think that has to be done daily. This may be weekly, but that has to be done daily. Get someone to read and guide you. It's important. And there will be many people who can guide you. In fact, your own colleagues, others, aspirants who are appearing with you could be your guide. I had suggested that you constitute a WhatsApp group and discuss every day. You can actually share what you've written with them. But be fair to yourself. Don't write an essay in 3 hours after researching. Put about an hour, 15 minutes. That's the time that becomes available to you. Write in that particular time. Good, bad, or ugly, don't worry about it. To begin with, there will be problems. But once you get used to it, you will see it will become very, very smooth. And then, as I mentioned and I keep mentioning, constitute a group and share what you write and discuss. That's the easiest way. During my time, we couldn't do that, because now you have technology. You can constitute WhatsApp group. You can share notes with each other. You can discuss with each other. In my time, we had telephones. Very difficult to communicate with people around. But now you can actually share, each one of you. If you constitute a group of 5 persons each, and by circulation, you can show each other's essays, then you will help each other. You don't have to have external guidance. So constitute this group, very important. And keep all your writing for future reference. This again is important, because you will see the improvement that you're making. If you do what I'm telling you to do regularly, I can assure you, you will improve and you will do well in your essay writing. So all the best. Take care. God bless you and stay positive.